Welcome to this very special show here on Beyond Radio. It's Film in Focus, the review of the year 2018. And I am the Cinema Professor, and joining me once again is Ray Turner. Hello, Ray.
Hi, Keith.
How's it going?
Great, thank you. How about you?
Not bad. This is just showbiz talk because, of course, in reality, we've seen each other outside that glass, so it's just formality, yeah. We've got our A games on.
We've got showbiz in our blood.
In our bloods, indeed. So the deal is, in case you didn't listen last year, me and Ray will have a general discussion about the year in film, and we have also come up with our own individuals' top tens of the year, which we will discuss later on. And I also have some turkeys to discuss, so the bottom 10 of the year, which will be coming up shortly as well. And if there's a bit of time later, I have some TV listings with some films on over the holidays. If not, I think I'll put them on the Facebook page. But it is very much your show, so if you want to get in touch with your cinematic highs and lows of the year, then you can text the studio on 07399 08 5508, or you can email studio@beyondradio.co.uk. So I'll start with the question which I started with roughly 1 year ago, and that's for you, Ray, and that is, in your opinion, based on what you've seen, has it been a good year for film?
Oh, God, it's such a hard question. I think there have been two very outstandingly good films this year that I've seen.
Yeah.
And there's been some okay films. It's really hard to tell, isn't it? Because you forget how many good films come out in 1 year until you actually have to make a list of them. And you think, well, there's these great films. None of these films have measured up to that. But actually, what other films came out of this? So I think it's probably been... Actually, the fact that there's two films I thought were really outstanding actually means it was a better year than last year, in my opinion.
Okay, that's fair. So did you see less films this year?
Yes, I definitely saw less. Yeah. I actually slightly consciously saw less films, but because I've been keeping a list, because I knew I'd be doing this thing, and Letterboxd has proved very useful.
Yeah,
I was really surprised actually at how few films I saw.
Okay,
less than 40.
Okay,
new films, that is, not.
Yes.
Less than 40 new films that have been released this year.
When you come to your list.
It was surprised me actually how little that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has been a good year. I think, like most years now, there's so many films out, because obviously for this film for this show, I also see films that are streaming on Netflix and various sites, and obviously I went to Fright Fest this year, so I saw quite a lot of films there, some of which haven't been released yet properly. Yeah. So again, it's that proportion of good and bad. I mean, I think on average, even in a bad week, you're going to get one or two good films. But likewise, there's plenty of clunkers and turkeys throughout the year.
Well, I think because I don't have Netflix, I don't have access to, and I get a feeling I'm actually missing out on a lot of stuff that isn't getting cinema releases, or maybe just isn't getting cinema releases in Lancaster, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been... Because I think we talked briefly about this sort of issue last year. I think there's obviously this ongoing conversation and tension between the streaming side of things and the cinema and the festival, because obviously the Cannes Film Festival have taken a stance where they don't put Netflix films into competition out of principle almost. But there has been slight moves on that, because obviously the more recent Netflix films have got cinema releases, even though they're very limited.
Right.
I mean, the one thing I'll mention is I still haven't seen the new Alfonso Cuarón film, Roma, which
I've been hearing a lot about it.
Yeah, I mean...
Well, I mean, and we've had a new Orson Welles film this year, which... hasn't been shown,
that was a Netflix original, which is sort of funny sign of the times,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that would have been... Well, I certainly would have seen it. Would have gone if I... And will go when I get the chance.
When you get a chance, yeah. But yeah, it is interesting, the ongoing thing with that. But there you have it, and I think it's just I probably made this point last year. I think sometimes certain films, especially now, I think when mainstream films, mainstream multiplexes are kind of pushing a lot of niche indie films out to a certain extent. I think sometimes those films will find their home on VOD or DVD.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
it's a shame it has to be like that, but I guess that's the way it's been going for a while now.
I do think a lot of, particularly Hollywood, but particularly the blockbusters actually, sort of feel like they're slightly designed to be watched on, albeit very big, tellies nowadays. They don't feel like a night out at the cinema so much. They feel like something that's more satisfying on telly.
Yeah.
I think. That's my opinion. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I can see what you mean by that. Do we have an email?
Yes, we do have an email. It's from Rowan, who says, can't believe her dad's on the radio and is fascinated.
He's on here quite a lot.
Yeah, but she's normally in bed. We're earlier now.
Okay.
You see.
So a new listener.
Well, hello, Rowan.
Hello, Roland. Thank you for getting in touch tonight.
She probably didn't type that herself. She's 7. So.
Broken the illusion. Thank you for getting in touch tonight. Yes. Sorry. What point were we on?
We were talking about whether Hollywood films are better on TV or on the cinema.
Yeah.
And the whole thing of Netflix, and and whether Netflix is a good thing or not. We weren't really talking about that, but that's I suppose
that's a whole longer issue.
Without Netflix, we wouldn't have this new Orson Welles film. But it's not a new film, obviously, but it's been finished. And,
yeah, I mean, I don't know about streaming in general. I do like the Netflix model. For 2 particular reasons. One, I just happen to think it's good value for money for what you're getting. And 2, I think it does give the directors and writers creative control outside of which they very often don't get in the studio system now. So that's a couple of positives. But yeah, I mean, as I was saying to you off air, it's interesting, this recent article from The Guardian saying we're on course for the highest grossing year since 1971 at the cinema. I mean, that is quite surprising.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and that's. I am racking my brains to think, well, what are the films that people are flocking to see? And you mentioned one that may come up in the list later on.
Yeah, and I think there has been art house lists. I mean, I don't want to say too much because I might mention them later, but obviously a recent film like Shoplifters has done really good money for an art house release.
Right.
And yeah, maybe it's just becoming a bit more of a niche culture now where people want more variety and not just the bog standard or the...
Well, maybe it is that people are not going to the cinema to see Hollywood films and they are going to the cinema to see other films, although that wouldn't explain why it's the highest grossing year since 1971, did you say?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know, that wouldn't explain that, but would it? I don't know.
Well, I think no, it wouldn't exactly, but just the fact that if it dropped off in recent years, then you could maybe account that. It's difficult because obviously it's largely accepted then for mainstream film, it's kind of... I don't know if this is insulting to the general public, but then maybe they will just go with what they know, the sort of brand names or what have you. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of grew up under the impression that the 70s were not a sort of an era where people were flocking to the cinema because you were getting quite odd sort of little quirky films like, I don't know, Taxi Driver and Mean Streets, those kind of, being made by Hollywood studios and sort of Five Easy Pieces, those kind of films, and then sort of Jaws came along, and then Star Wars, and then it was like all blockbusters in the 80s, and you assume, or I assumed, that the 80s were when they were making lots of money. Of course, that was also the era of VHS, I guess.
But then I suppose, in a way, the 70s pointed the way a little bit, because you did have people working within much limited budgets, much smaller, and obviously coming up with original ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the original Halloween, for example, is a great example of independent cinema, because it was made on a shoestring
What year was that?
78.
78, was it?
And obviously, at the time, it was an original idea, which has been much...
They're still milking.
Still milking, yeah. But yeah, it is interesting. I mean, it's maybe a discussion for another show.
Yeah.
Have there been any sort of gems this year? Any surprises, maybe?
Well, I mean, I think there's been two.
Okay.
I think there's been two absolute...
But if you want to hold on, I guess if they're...
Well, I mean, they're going to come up, in my list.
Okay, so we'll hold off. We'll come back to those. Any disappointments?
Well, whether it can count as a disappointment, I don't think I was expecting much. But The Last Jedi, I think, was just totally forgettable. And I think the more they just keep milking this kind of Star Wars cash cow.
Although that was last year. But you might...
It was the first film I saw this year. It was the first film I saw in January.
Okay.
I mean, I was going to just say about that, actually, that what I'm finding, and I found it with the Force Awakens as well a little bit, and Rogue One, and I didn't see the Han Solo one, but they don't feel like Star Wars, these films, where, in a way that...
Not even The Force Awakens?
Not to me.
Because that seemed like a very entertaining couple of hours, where it was a throwback to... a little bit what appealed about the original.
I mean, that's maybe true, but what I mean is the kind of the sort of I don't know how to say it really, but when I saw the prequels, I mean, much as everybody didn't like them, they felt like Star Wars. They felt like the same story and the same kind of world and the same kind of universe and all that. But these ones have just felt like other films that are just using the name. That, to me, I don't know.
But maybe that's a good thing, because maybe you have to update these things. I mean, it's been so many years later.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Rather than just doing another version, which is going to be a lesser version.
Well, but the prequels were not ripping off the first ones. I mean,
no.
I mean, I know no one liked them. That's where
terrible.
I didn't dislike them as much as everybody else. I don't think, apart from the Phantom Menace, which was truly dreadful. But But they felt, they felt like part of the same story. Whereas, I don't know. I mean, to me, it begs the question of, apart from the obvious one that people are going to go and see a Star Wars film, why not just make a film? If you just want to make a fun couple of hours set in space, fine. But why is it Star Wars? And the only reason it's Star Wars is because
but that's kind of what the original was. It wasn't much more than that.
No, I know, but I mean, it was original, that's I mean, it wasn't that original, but it wasn't a franchise. It wasn't a, do you know what I mean? It was just a film that someone made, and it caught a mood, it caught the zeitgeist. It was and it was, and I mean, I was there, I saw it at the time, and it felt, I suppose, I was 9, so I hadn't seen all the kind of the war for the Battle of Britain and everything that he was kind of basing it on, and perhaps some of the other films that he was, I don't know, certainly hadn't seen the Kurosawa stuff that it was kind of based on. And to me, it just felt like something I'd never seen before, and it was so exciting.
Okay.
And I don't know, I mean, obviously, I'm a lot older now, but I go and see these films now and kind of go,
Okay, fair enough.
But, I mean, and there was and I have to say, there was a level of dumbness to The Last Jedi that just wasn't in the other films. I mean, spaceships running out of petrol or whatever it is, and stopping. That takes a level of kind of not knowing about basic physics. That sort of.
But isn't it more science fantasy than science?
Yeah, no, but I mean, yes, of course. But Do you know what I mean? There's a kind of there's a point at which you sort of go, well.
I suppose the other thing is if the plot was working more for you, maybe wouldn't notice that sort of thing.
That was the plot, though, wasn't it? That was the plot. They were being chased and they were going to run out of petrol.
There was a lot going on. I mean,
to be honest, I just
anyway.
I saw it twice. I saw it with my daughter and I saw it with my son a week later. And literally, when I saw it with my son, I couldn't remember anything I'd seen the first time around. It took 2 years, and I kind of start to remember a few bits, but found it utterly forgettable. You love it?
Yeah, I loved it.
Fair enough.
So I'm going to do my top 10 or maybe bottom 10's the appropriate word, turkeys of the year. So you've probably heard me talk about some of these films over the course of last year. So number 10 is How to Talk to Girls at Parties. Now, this is actually a John Cameron Mitchum film. So a guy who's done good work in the past. He did Rabbit Hole. He did that interesting sort of musical, Hedrick and the Angry Inch. So he has done interesting work before, but this was this sort of horrible kind of mess of going for something like Jarman's Jubilee with something like that odd 80s sci-fi. Was it called? The name's escaping me now, but it was similar to Liquid Sky. That was the name of it.
Oh, that was a
terrible film. Pretentious.
So
yeah. Well, this is in a similar mould, but so similar sort of plot.
Okay, I want to see it now, actually.
But the cast were kind of good. It had people like Nicole Kidman, Elle Fanning in. And it was just so dry and dreary and just really dodgy accents everywhere. It was set in London, but really boring experience to sit through. Number 9, Modern Life is Rubbish, of course, named after the Blur albums, so set around this time. Really navel-gazing sort of romantic type drama with a really annoying lead character who's just really awful to the romantic interest. And really on-the-nose musical moments, they really hit you over the head with them. So that was a down point for British cinema during the year. That's Modern Life is Rubbish. 8, Lies We Tell. I've forgotten this was this year, actually. I thought it was late last year. But there was a story to this because it's actually directed by a guy in Bradford who owns like a double glazing business. So he actually got rich on double glazing. And that he used the money to make this film. And watching it, he should have stuck with the double glazing business. But it was very poor. It was this story of, at the start of the film, there's a really small role for Harvey Keitel, who then obviously he saw the script and said, I'll do a few minutes, that's about it. And he gets killed off. He's this rich business owner. And so that kind of leaves his mistress, so to speak, who's then has to deal with the fallout from his sort of business proposals and this sort of gangland. And there's also, who's the guy out of Gabriel Byrne, he's in it. Right. So there's some nice scenes between those two. They're probably the highlight. But, yeah, again, it's going for this noir-type feel in Bradford, but it just looks really clunky and...
I wonder if they got new windows and that's why they did it. It might have been...
It could have been. It could have been. Like the script, but I hope this is his last foray into filmmaking. It was really, really melodramatic and tedious. So that's Lies We Tell. 7 is Proud Mary, which was this really awful attempt to reboot the sort of black exploitation genre. It was really heavy-handed. It had Taraji P. Henson, who I really like, but she was totally wasted in the lead role. So that was really cliche and boring. That's Proud Mary. Number 6, The Nun, a terrible horror movie, which is in the Conjuring series. We now, because we had a spin-off with Annabelle, who was the evil doll. Annabelle Creation. No, I know you don't know any of these things, but I'm broadcasting. and then we had so this is the latest spin-off. And it was really, really bad. Not scary, not interesting. Blandly directed. Some really weak characters. Number 5, another horror, is Winchester, which was loosely based on the Winchester rifle kind of heritage, but that was a very loose link. Basically, it was a very generic haunted house type movie with Helen Mirren unfortunately not hamming it up enough. If she'd gone the extra mile, it might have been worth watching just for her, but sadly it wasn't. Number 4, I reviewed it a few weeks ago, is Robin Hood. Like we needed a new Robin Hood, but this is Robin Hood as done as a Guy Ritchie gangster type film, where almost they're going for modern action scenes. They didn't think the bow and arrows were enough. They had to try and sort of egg it up to be like a modern kind of gangster type. And no, we didn't need any of that. And everyone is either not very good in it or really miscast. I mean, Taron Egerton, who's in the Kingsman movie, he plays Robin Hood. I like him, but he's totally miscast, because what he is actually quite a charming little comic actor, and so he was miscast in this chavvy, macho Robin Hood type persona. The romance with Maid Marian was just so forgettable and melodramatic, and it's a decent cast, but everyone's wasted. Like Jamie Foxx is in it, he's wasted. Ben Mendelsohn is reasonable fun in it, but he's wasted, and the action scenes are just all over the place. So number 3, another, even though I said it's been a decent year for horror, another horror movie, Slender Man. So Slender Man is sort of based on this real life thing, which is an online phenomenon where there were actually some incidents involved. It's like a myth, essentially, that's grown online, which has basically affected real teenagers, so to speak. There's a documentary on the legend which came out in about 3 or 4 years ago. That I recommend checking out. This I don't. This was, very by the numbers. They could have done an interesting film about you could see how it could transfer into an interesting horror movie.
My son used to go on about Slender Man a lot.
So, okay, so this is something
Apart from that, I've never heard
It's
of it.
very bizarre, the whole thing, but I'd recommend the documentary, but not this. 2, Father Figures, which was this really grotesque and actually quite mean-spirited sort of comedy, where again you had some decent people in it, but I remember it being particularly nasty towards Glenn Close, the fact she was wasted in it, sort of hated it. And number 1, my least favourite film of the year, funny because we were talking about Netflix, and they've had a pretty good year for their original films. But Paradox, which was this film directed by Daryl Hannah in her first film as director, starring her now husband Neil Young, and it's a Western musical. And when I heard that Western musical, Neil Young, I thought, that could be quite good actually, but it's just so self-indulgent and long-winded and just such a vanity project, basically. And it's just very navel-gazing and all these sort of links to like spirituality, but they're just so heavy-handed. And the direction's poor, the story's not very interesting. You get these sort of cutaways to like live musical performances from Young. So they're obviously the highlight, but hey, I sort of know Neil Young's pretty talented, and I'll just watch a concert of him if I want that sort of stuff. So that was my worst of the year, and I think as some of the letdowns, Suspiria was a huge letdown. The recent remake, I think the director just isn't up to directing horror, and it missed the point of the original.
Yeah, I perhaps missed the point of the original, but I thought it was quite. I was kind of going with it. I quite enjoyed it, apart from the end, really.
Apart from the end,
it was way too long. It was about an hour too long.
Yeah,
maybe.
Agreed.
But no, I mean thought it was tense. I thought it was beautifully atmospheric, and then it got really stupid. And I also thought the plot made no sense. And I think they kind of tried to.
Well, I'll tell you why I didn't think it was tense, and that's because it lost the mystery of the original film. And it was they worked in these, like, political and gender themes.
Yeah, which didn't go anywhere.
No, they needed to make that work with the actual plot, and they didn't really do that. And you just didn't have that mystery of the original film. They just explained too much. They should have left more to the imagination.
Maybe, because I knew the original film, I knew it anyway. So, but I thought it was...
No, but what I mean is, in a way, it's not so... You get the original film and you're scared by it, but you wouldn't necessarily know... I guess they just don't hit you over the head with stuff like they do in this. But anyway, that's letdown of the year. Predator was a letdown. The Shane Black Predator, Mary Shelley. The Other Side of the Wind, we don't really have much time to talk, but that was a massive letdown, the Orson Welles
film.
Right.
I haven't seen it.
Terrible. Yeah, it really was tedious.
I've heard good things about it.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, once you've seen it, we can have a discussion about it.
We'll do that.
So what we'll do now is we'll do Ray's top 10 of the year.
Oh,
if you want to go.
In one foul swoop. We've got to do this kind of quickly. Okay. So, at 10, speaking of blaxploitation, although I don't know if that's really what you'd call this, it's BlacKkKlansman, which is John David Washington, Adam Driver. It's Spike Lee's film, true story, about a black man who infiltrated the Ku Klux Klan and joined and became a member, although he couldn't go to the meetings, obviously. So Adam Driver, and he's a cop. He's a cop. And I enjoyed it a lot, actually, and I thought there was some nice stuff in it. But there's a part of me that kind of thought Spike Lee's kind of going with the police here. You know, he's kind of the police are the good guys. And that to me says Spike Lee is losing his edge a little bit, you know. He's not got the thing of kind of do the right thing. So, shall I just carry on? Shall I do 9? So at 9... I have Ghost Stories, which is Jeremy Dyson, Andy Nyman. Jeremy Dyson, obviously, one of the League of Gentlemen, and Andy Nyman was a writer, I believe, for Derren Brown, and he stars in it. It's got a few comic actors, so Martin Freeman, Paul Whitehouse, and it is gloriously kind of spooky, I think, very, very spooky, but. I think it's got this kind of twist at the end, which actually, for me, kind of ruined the film. It kind of took away. I left the cinema kind of going, oh, right, okay. And actually, I think if they'd just gone with this is a ghost story, you know, I'd have preferred it.
I think people, I've heard that criticism as well.
Yeah. But no, I mean, but very good. Very, very tense, very exciting. Not exciting so much as spooky. And so number 8, another horror film, it's A Quiet Place, which I just thought was a very nice idea. It's very different. And one thing I think, Emily Blunt, I just think is kind of just an incredibly appealing actress to watch on screen. And that's kind of, I don't know, it's like every time I see her in a film, I think, she's great. She's really, really good. And she, I mean, you know...
She's versatile as well, isn't she?
Yeah, and I mean, she even manages to give birth completely noiselessly and make it almost makes it believable. Yeah. I mean, there's the one sort of bit silly moment in the film, I think, a very silly moment in the film. But apart from that, you know, I mean, it was tense. I mean, it was, and I think the silence of it, you know, kind of was
there's a power to the silence, isn't there, which is quite unique. You know, it's almost like an atmosphere in itself.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they play on it. And, I mean, there's always this sort of moment when you kind of see the monsters and it's a little bit kind of, oh, okay. But, you know, it was.
Yeah, I thought they handled that quite well. And the monster effects were pretty good as well. So
yeah, they weren't bad.
Yeah, so okay.
Yeah, number 7 is A Star Is Born. Really, musical, sort of. And obviously this has been made before, and so we all know the story and everything. But what really struck me actually is, and I've never seen the Barbara Streisand, Chris Christopherson version. I've seen the Judy Garland, James Mason version, but they look like Lady Gaga looks like Barbara Streisand, and Bradley Cooper looks like Chris Christopherson.
Okay.
And I just thought, I imagine seeing this and thinking, well, if I saw the Barbara Streisand, would I know the difference? It's like,
right.
But you know, it's, and she's very good actually as well.
She's very good, yes.
So it's just a great story, isn't it? I mean, it's the classic sort of story of love and stardom and fame, and you know, and the upside and the downside of it, and the music was all right, you know. It was, and so that's my number 7.
Okay, can I just ask you a question about that?
Go on then.
Because although I liked it, I didn't like it as much as you and as much as some. And my particular issue was the fact that it felt very much like an abusive relationship. And it seemed very much like, well, first of all, it was hard to care about the relationship because of that. And secondly, it kind of played it as if, you know, very early on when he sort of comes to her house and he's insisting she goes, it kind of tries to play that as quite charming sort of thing, like, oh, he's roguish, you know, look at him, and it kind of felt like, well, why should we care about him? Because he pretty much treats her bad for most of the film. And that left me a bit cold. I mean, the other stuff I sort of agree with, but...
Okay. I don't know. I don't really have an answer.
No.
I don't know what to say. I didn't pick up on that, really. So shall I press on? So number 6 is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Okay.
It's Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell. I think everybody agrees Sam Rockwell stole the film.
Yes.
You know, and he was brilliant. But I think it was just a very beautifully kind of messy story. I mean, it was just, you know, there was no moral centre to this story.
Yeah.
It was all over the place, and in a great sort of way. It was just kind of, you never quite knew what they were going to do next. You never really quite knew who to trust, who not to trust.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's like, well, I don't know. Do I approve, or this is just absolutely everything I completely disapprove of, and I'm kind of cheering them on, saying, "Go for it," you know, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Carry on.
Okay,
Keep
so
going.
at number 5, it's a comedy. It's The Disaster Artist.
Okay.
James Franco's film about the making of The Room, which I've not seen. I've not seen The Room, but I gather it's generally thought to be one of the worst films ever made. And yeah, just it's funny, it's kind of witty, it's sharp, and it also has a cameo from Tommy Wiseau, who is the guy who made The Room, and they put it post credits, which I thought was really funny because I'm so anal, I sit through the end credits of the films, and I think everyone had left the cinema, and I was like, and I saw this bit, I saw Tommy Wiseau do his little, so yeah.
Someone's just handily reminded me on an email, then Penny Marshall, the director, passed away this year, so I guess we should dedicate the show to her. And I guess her film Big with Tom Hanks was a big part of my childhood, sort of classic coming-of-age story, one of the defining Tom Hanks performances, and of course the scene, well, many great scenes, but the scene with them on top of the piano doing the notes is so lovable and iconic. And it's a film where the formula has been repeated so many times since, but obviously not as good. It really is the sort of role that made Tom Hanks' career in some ways, certainly that part of his career. And yeah, also The League of Their Own, which I remember watching with my family when I was young.
I've seen it.
And yeah, that's a really charming film as well. So
that was Madonna, was it? Was that her first acting?
I think it might have been. It was certainly the late 80s, wasn't it? But Yeah, so thank you for the call, for the listener and I'll probably say a bit more on Penny Marshall in the new year on the first show back. But Ray, if you want to return,
okay. So I'm going to have to hurry. So number 4, it's The Greatest Showman. So I like musicals.
okay.
This got a lot of hate, really, but I think it was great. Actually, it was just everything you wanted a sort of film like that to be. Just great choreography. Appealing characters and good songs and big sort of showstoppers, you know.
Yeah.
So number 3, another musical, but this one, you know, Mamma Mia, here we go again. 3rd favourite film of the year, just because I want to be hated by everybody. What really struck me about this, nobody's said, it has got the same structure as The Godfather Part 2. It's like you're flashing between the daughter and at a certain age and that daughter's mother when she was young, which is what The Godfather Part 2 does with the son and Robert De Niro as his father at about the same age. And just great, just very joyful and great songs. But I think now 2 and 1 are the 2 standout films of the year, and I think that it was hard to pick which one I was going to put first and second. But anyway, second, I put The Miseducation of Cameron Post.
Okay.
Which we did talk about on the show, and it was...
Yeah, amazing.
Brilliant. Just made me very angry and sort of... and
a great lead performance, which I think should be nominated come awards season.
So that was just brilliant. And my number 1 film was BPM, which is my only non-Hollywood film.
Oh, very interesting.
Which is a film about... AIDS activists who are targeting labs who are retaining potential AIDS cures in order to sort of try and maximise their profits while all these people are dying. And it's very bleak, and it was a very, very long sequence of someone dying. Yeah. But just utterly engrossing, engaging, and just...
And it really makes you think about all the issues, doesn't it? And I think the way I think of the film is it opens up that dialogue. I think the way forward to understanding this a bit better is to open up the dialogue, open up the conversations. Yeah, it was such a rich film, so much depth to it. Tremendously sad and powerful. I really loved it,
So if you only see 2 films this year, those 2... are an order of magnitude better than everything else, I would say.
Well, that's tremendous, because it actually leads onto my list, because that's my number 10, 120 BPM, so that's a nice synchronicity. There you go. So we
so Mamma Mia is number 1 for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm getting to it. Number 9 is A Fantastic Woman, which is the Spanish film about the transgender woman. At the start of the film, her lover dies, and then she really feels the bigotry, really, of his family and the people he knows, and how they try and deny her grieving for him, and he really gets across that experience. And I really loved the balance of the sort of lyrical, fantastical, these moments of fantasy where she feels she has an escape, but then obviously the brutal, gritty realism as well.
You know, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
Okay, that's fair. I really liked it. And the director has a new film out called Disobedience, his first English language, which is coming up at the Dukes, and I like that as well. But that's A Fantastic Woman. Number 8 is Loveless, which me and Ray saw.
I knew you'd put that in
contemporary Russian film about a marriage ending, and then they essentially forget about their child. And so it flipped that around a bit, where you're focusing on the marriage, and then you get this surprise where they lose the child, and the rest of the film is about the search.
That very nearly made my top.
Very contemporary film, beautifully cinematic, the landscape and everything, and really good performances.
Not as good as Mamma Mia, obviously.
No, of course not. And number 7, 3 Billboards, we've already talked about. Tremendously rich, great performances, and divisive, which I think is a sign of a good film. Number 6, Leave No Trace. So this was from the director of Winter's Bone. So this was essentially about a father and daughter living out in the wilds, but then they get sort of found out and discovered then they have to find a new space to live. So again, very contemporary, very low key, but beautifully acted and directed. Number 5, a really powerful first-time French feature called Custody, which has one of the most unnerving endings I've maybe seen in a very long time. That's about a dispute over custody, but really impressive for a first feature. Number 4 is The Third Murder, a Japanese sort of courtroom thriller, but one where you get a lot of flashbacks. That's actually from the director of Shoplifters, which won the Palme d'Or. So that's Third Murder, which was actually my film of the year, halfway through the year. Number 3, Black Klansman, already discussed it. Number 2, I saw it a few weeks ago, The Wild Pear Tree, this new 3-hour odyssey from Nirel Binge-Sinar. I covered it in some depth, so I won't redo it, but I just thought it was pure cinema. I thought there were so many intriguing conversations and themes in it. There's a beautiful, intimate scene underneath the pear tree of the title. And my number 1, which I saw this week, is Shoplifters. So the second film to feature the director Hirokazu Koda. It's about a family, or what appears to be a family, and basically the adults in that family teach the kid how to shoplift. It's about poverty, essentially, people living on that side of things. But then there are twists that are cleverly worked in, like a thriller. It's a very moving film, but without black and white characters, a lot of complexity, and cinematic but also realistic. I'll do a proper review when we come back, but Shoplifters is my film of the year. And we're almost out of time, so thank you very much for listening. Thank you for Ray for coming.
Thank you.
I will return on the 3rd of January, where I will have a look ahead to the films coming up in 2019, and I'll have a few reviews on that show as well. But we're going to end with a bit of Christmas-themed music. This is Shannon Knife and Space Christmas. Have a good Christmas.
So how come Mamma Mia wasn't on your list?
Oh,